Recording in progress.
All right, I will now call the meeting to order. Welcome to the special meeting of the Federal Way City Council for July 19th, 2022. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are here for a study session with regard to the priorities for their ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funds. First, we'll have a report from Brian Davis in regard to the City Council Subcommittee. Then we'll have a staff report from Steve Groom, our Finance Director, and then council questions and discussion. All right, with that, Brian?
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Steve and I are going to tag team a little bit, but I wanted to first start off by thanking the Council Ad Hoc Committee that was formed to assist in prioritizing what we have presented for you today. Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Kochmar, and Councilmember Hong Tran were members of that committee, and they helped finalize what we have before you today. Before we get into specifics, I wanted to ask Director Groom to refresh the Council's memory on some of the changes that have happened in terms of ARPA funding and priorities, and the flexibility that we now have that previously we did not have. When we first started talking about ARPA, there was a lot of different categories which still exist, but there's some added flexibility that we now have. And so I'd just like Director Groom to come and talk about that.
Thank you. Let me start by saying that Governing Magazine posted an article last month that said that cities across America are spending ARPA funds very cautiously. We're not alone. Good reason. No one wants to be spending money that turns out to be ineligible. Congress passed the $1.9 trillion ARPA Act back in March of 21, and it included $351 billion for cities across America. That means Treasury put out a massive amount of money. They distributed the cash before they even got their rules put out. So if you recall, we received the first half of our money back in May of 2021, and they issued their interim final rule, an odd name, but still they invited public comment and questions, and they gave cities across America through July 3 months to invite for comments and questions, and there were a lot of them. Since this was one-time funding, cities were looking very carefully at one-time opportunities. In other words, they didn't want to greenlight new programs that would require future funding that ARPA wouldn't cover, but they also wanted to make sure that they avoided any audit risk, that nothing that would subsequently be taken back, and the money would have already been gone. Cities would have been out. So the final rule came out in January of 2022, and it was an odd set of rules. It read like an FAQ. So we have been sitting in webinars for months upon months. As Brian mentioned, the categories even have expanded, they have changed, they have shifted. But most significantly for us, one of the things that they changed was they changed the definition of, they changed the formula for lost revenue. They added an escalator clause, and we weren't able to do the complete math until we closed the books for our audit for the 2021 fiscal year. And that's when we were able to confirm that if we wanted to, we could access the entire amount of the $19.2 million under government services. Now, as this governing article, I thought they put it as well as anybody. ARPA funds are not fully discretionary. They come with reporting requirements. If a city uses its money for revenue replacement, it pretty much has to tell the Treasury Department it was used for revenue replacement and government services. Community relief programs are a different matter. Reporting to Treasury could include details such as evidence-based research behind a program, the number of people it will serve, demographic information about them, and tracking measurable outcomes. And that is what it sounds like. It sounds like a lot of staff-intensive work and follow-up, and we would need to put together a program and manage it well. This article says administratively it's much more burdensome to use the money to provide relief directly to the kind of people that are most impacted by COVID, which is the sort of people you want to help. So we have been working very cautiously trying to find out how we can navigate all of the requirements and the compliance requirements of ARPA. But at the end of the day, we have a worksheet, and I'm not sure if I should put it on the screen if it's of use to you. You have it in your packets, and I think you have it handed out. And should I put this on the shared? Yeah, I should do the. Okay. So what we have got before us, we've got, the first column shows council approval, dollars, amounts, and dates. And you can see the dates that have, hopefully are all in memory, the things that we have approved. And on the proposed column, we think, for example, on the, under the retention bonus, we think that that'll come down 100,000. And on the grant writing, I think there's a shift. We would probably be better served to just count that as 650,000 in administrative costs. Our intent there is most federal programs come with a 10% administrative overhead. And so on 19 million, half would be 950,000. So that's our estimate at this moment on what we would probably, and that would be a very conservative way to go to charge it, to charge administrative costs to the program. I think, and towards the bottom, there is a $3 million amount that says social services that support. The intent there, I believe, and here I'm getting over onto the program side and that's getting out of my lane a little bit, but I think the intent is to provide an umbrella amount for which application and process and review would proceed within that dollar amount. And that, I think it's footnoted to include a few sample people that we know have applied for this kind of assistance, but our intent is not to be limiting in this document. It's just to be, for example. I think that's where my presentation can end until there's questions.
Yes, yeah, until I need you to clap. Thank you, Director Groom. As Steve mentioned, and just to go over a few of these, so the Chamber of Commerce grant, the committee came with a recommendation of 750. That originally, though, there was a footnote that their original request was $1.5 million, and so the committee recommended that we do half of that request. The Federal Way Mayor requested 300,000, and the committee recommended that that be granted in full. And then, as Steve mentioned, just to reemphasize this, the 10% overhead is a standard that many cities are using to administer these funds, just because it's such a great amount. And we're proposing to do half that for a total of 950,000. We may regret that later, but we also wanted to free up as much for the council to consider for other projects. But that's what we propose for that. The hazard pay, we've already had discussions about that previously, as well as the broadband grant as well. So then these, I don't know if it shows up on your slide, but the yellow ones, does yellow show up on your screen? The yellow ones are the ones that the council has already approved, and these are the dates in which you approved them. As Steve mentioned, we are, the retention pay, when we discussed that, we just took every employee and maxed it out to what what the maximum potential would be and if we paid everyone out. The reality is much different. There's people that retire or resign or get promoted or for a number of other reasons. There's just a lot of, there's not continuity that would keep every single position filled during that time, and that was our initial calculation. So we reduced that by 100,000. It's likely that will be reduced a little bit more as well, but we wanted to be conservative in our reduction. And then, and I can go, okay, so yeah, and as Steve mentioned, the $3 million down here for social services report. We've had a number of people ask that we want access to ARPA funds, and many of them are social services requests, and that's what this would fall under. And it's through an application process through community services in which they could potentially access those funds depending on if they qualify to begin with. We have an application process that exists, and we likely would replicate that and merely expand the opportunities that we have based on the award criteria that we have, much greater than we have in the past with this assistance.
I need to own up to the math error. I double counted the full slide, 484.
Oh, sure, yeah. So, the 484 here at the bottom, that's a contingency that the council has. When we did the math, when we did the pool slide, I don't know if you recall, but we approved $500,000 for the pool slide, and then we came back, park staff went and bid it out, and it was considerably more than $500,000. And so we came back to the council and said we'd like to use ARPA funds for this immediate need, for this asset that we have, and the council did approve that, and it was, that is this amount right here. So originally you did 500,000 here, then we came back for another 484,792. And just, as Director Groom said, he's owning it, but we all own it. We make mistakes sometimes. We had double counted that. So that now is a contingency for the council, a tiny bit of room to work with, for your discussions. So, happy to answer any questions or going deeper than that on any of these items or any other questions related to the overall ARPA proposal. But again, thank you to Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, and Councilmember Tran for their assistance.
Okay, Councilmember Norton, then Councilmember Seppadossin, then Councilmember Dovey.
Thank you for your report. I have a question about number one. What does the Chamber of Commerce and the Federal Way Mirror have to do with public health and economic impacts?
Yeah, primarily the economic impacts. So I can speak to the Chamber of Commerce. Their grant or their request is to help with general economic development in the community with marketing and to.
To whom?
I'm sorry.
Marketing to whom?
To promote businesses, to
Okay.
Recruit, retain, expand, just everything that has to do with business growth and retention, that we want to bolster that, and the chamber is a good partner to do that.
Okay, and the Mirror?
Mirror is for, I'm drawing a blank here. Olivia, you want to come?
Why do we, my question, I'm just
Advertisements.
wondering, why do we subsidize businesses? I'm new to this, so that's why I'm asking.
If I could,
Yeah.
actually, with regard to the Mirror, it was about advertising
Yeah,
for
thank you.
businesses to
Yeah.
make sure that COVID-affected businesses, all businesses have been COVID-affected. But that's why we bring it here for the council to consider.
So COVID is still a thing.
Yeah, it's impacting.
I think
people.
the impacts that have been felt over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
How much money was given to these businesses over the last, is this something that's a repetitive thing that's expected to keep happening, or?
So, yeah, these are all one time, with the exception of maybe portions of the 3 million. There may be repeat applicants. If we do it over multiple years, they may be able to get multiple years, but it's probably not going to be not much more than a few years of this expanded amount, and then it would then be reduced to what we currently have on a year-to-year basis.
So if we were to give this money to the Chamber and the Mirror, would we have any kind of expectations or parameters as to how they are supposed to be spending the money? And then who's going to follow up with that? Is that going to be the administrative grant coordinator?
Yeah, that's part of the admin,
Okay.
is draw up some form of agreement that provides the city an expectation of what the community would get in return for this investment.
Yeah, there are very strict guidelines.
Yeah.
In fact, that's, in the couple meetings that we've had with the Mirror and also with the Chamber, there are very strict guidelines because we have to keep, because it's federal money, we have to be very careful about exactly
Yeah,
what's done.
that's why I'm wondering, because this doesn't sound like it actually matches the headline. I mean, the header says public health and economic impacts, but it doesn't go under there to me. So where could I get a copy of those guidelines? Is that just something I would request from you
We can do that.
outside of the,
Yeah.
okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, and we should make sure, that's a great question. We want to make sure there's transparency and accountability, which has got to be key when we're talking about federal dollars. So thank you, Councilmember. Did you have something to add to
I
that?
just want to say that this is on the agenda now and then at the general meeting, but we're not voting on it today.
That's right.
So there's plenty of time to get your questions answered.
Not voting in the regular meeting?
Yeah, it's next, at the August meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. Councilmember Seppadossin?
Yeah. One conversation I had with the Mirror was around economic development, supporting and doing advertisement for minority-owned businesses, especially Black-owned and immigrant-owned businesses. So it's marketing for them because they're small mom-and-pop stores, so they do need that kind of support. And hopefully they'll also be linguistically appropriate, where they get that kind of support, where they can't do their own thing, and the mayor's offering to do that. And I think they're also matching it, but maybe I'm okay. They are also matching this amount, so. Okay, my question, thank you. That was it. Thank you. You answered one of my questions, so thank you, around administrative costs. But with lost revenue calculation, right? So it's up to 14,512, right? But here it's 19, wait, yeah, can you help me understand the math here?
The bottom right, 19?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's the total, that's both lost revenue and sections 1, 7, 4, and 5. That's all together.
So it's,
so,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. So I won't see the 14,
Yeah, the lost revenue total there is 16.9.
but we could only claim up to 14? Is that, I'm trying to match these two.
Are you looking at a previous version that we had where we did have 14.5 million? That was the lost revenue from the fiscal 2020 year, when we were able to calculate the 2021 lost revenue. Now we could access the whole entire grant. However, we've already got some categories that are kind of spoken for or in process. So the 19.2 million is the total amount of the grant entirely. So when you take away the first 3 or 4 categories, that leaves 16.9, which we can maximize, and that's the simplest way for us to spend ARPA money on government services with the least amount of restrictive requirements.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I'll do, okay, you'll explain it to me later. That's all good. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Councilmember Dovey.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a couple questions. And I guess it kind of comes down to what you said at the very beginning. This ARPA money is for people that need service, that lost service during COVID. I mean, that's what we're supposed to focus on, right? And maybe ways that we can use money from ARPA so we have more money in budgets in the future to serve people? Is that kind of the
Yeah.
whole approach? Okay. So I have a real hard time with number 1, economic impacts. I'm not sure that the chamber and the mayor, I'm not convinced that that's a good use of our money. And normally when we talk about $1 million, there's a lot more than just a number on a sheet of paper. So I'd hope that we're going to get a lot more information. I know I read through all those packets you gave us, and it just didn't seem to me that that's a great investment of our money. When I look at the grant writing services at $650,000, why aren't we hiring people instead of, are we hiring people, or are we going to a consultant? I was never involved in any of those discussions, so I don't know what we're actually doing.
Yeah, so the 650 is for all admin costs, including potentially grant writing services, which we do have a current contract with someone to do that. So
Okay, so we have a contract right now
do,
for
yeah.
$650,000?
well, it's not that full amount, but we have them available to do grant writing services.
So I would like to see that, what
Sure.
that really is. I mean, that's a big number to just to vote on, 650,000 with just a number on a piece of paper.
Well,
I mean,
just, yeah.
as a
so-
summary, I get it, it's a summary, but,
Well, so the 650 represents, actually, it's the 950 in total. That 950 amount represents 5% of the total grant. And many of the ARPA recipients are accounting for 10%.
okay, so we're
Oh,
paying
yeah.
a 5%
So
commission on the
we're
grant?
proposing half, just so that you
Okay.
have a little bit more
Okay.
flexibility in your deciding of other
Okay.
funds.
And then when we talk about turf on Celebration Park, what happens if we don't get the rest of the 11.5 million? Was that 900,000 get turned back in, or how long is it held there, or what's that look like?
Yeah, that's something that we're just,
We took that.
yeah, we're hanging on to for future grant matches or anything that would help. Because, coming up with a full 11 million is probably not really feasible for the city, so we want to set some aside for seed money.
I think the
Brian?
deputy mayor has something to say.
Oh, yeah.
We took the turf money out.
We reduced it. So
Yeah, we
we had it at
reduced it,
2 million,
right.
and now it's down to 900.
Right.
And then, of course, before we start, see, I would almost advocate the public economic impact goes into the social services and bump that from 3 to 5 million. I think that that's where more things are gonna be impacted than on the top.
Under number one?
Yeah, that's just my personal we're not making a decision, I'm just giving you my thoughts. And then when I read the Arts Commission plan to do a festival for 15,000, I think that's what that's for. I actually thought we should fund them more than that because we're only funding 1 year, and if you want to have a festival that goes on, you got to have more in the game than just 1 year so they don't hang themselves. You know, give them 3 years or something like that so they can actually build something that lasts for a long time. That was just a thought I had, and then, I don't know, when we get to, I think we have to be very, very slow in spending this money and very, very creative because this is going to impact a lot of citizens. And I know you're just looking for some directions, but I would like more information on number one, how we're gonna do 3 million. If I was making a decision today, I'd move the economic impacts down into the social area, because I think we'll get more benefit for the people that need the help. But that's just my comments for
Well,
right now.
actually, my understanding is that the 3 million is going to be going through a grant application process through Human Services.
Right,
And
but,
so
So
with that
why aren't the
economic,
chamber,
but right now, we have no
why
clue, we
aren't the
just have a
Chamber of
number, a
Commerce and Mirror doing
placeholder,
the
so.
same thing then?
Before we start giving money away, I think we need to have, maybe there is a process, I
Why do they get
just don't know
their
what
own
it
special
is.
category?
I don't think it would go through Human Services though, but I understand what you're saying. It just doesn't fit there. Because it's
That-
going to, you know, like Human
doesn't
Services
fit in public
applications,
health
they come in and they apply along with everybody else.
That's probably, because it doesn't naturally lend itself to a social service discussion. Yeah.
I guess I'm advocating the money could be more beneficially used in social services. I mean, I'm a business owner. There was a lot of PPP money, there was a lot of relief. I mean, that boat has sailed and gone, and I think our money needs to be at the social services, keeping people from falling through the safety net so that we're supporting them and keeping them in their homes and things like that.
Does the council want more information from the chamber and the mayor regarding these programs that we
Yeah,
supplied?
I personally would need a lot more information.
Okay.
Because
Will do.
if I was voting today, I would probably not be supporting it.
Brian, let's, maybe you can have either Steve or Bill, I see Bill in the back of the room, but or you, Steve or Bill, reach out to the, to the chamber, and I know that they provided a.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's more than what we have sent earlier, because they sent
Yeah.
a fairly, it was a detailed description of what they're proposing. You're talking about more than what you've got in the past, is that?
Yeah, or
Correct, okay.
at a minimum, what we've received to date, and then maybe a little bit
Sure.
more meat on the bone.
So I thought that we weren't allowed to spend ARPA funds on something that's a contiguous or something that is
Ongoing.
ongoing. So if these are ongoing grants that they've been receiving and plan on receiving in the future, then why is it okay to do it now? I mean, isn't that something that the feds might come back and say, give us back our $1,050,000 in the future?
You're talking about for the chamber and the mayor?
Yeah.
I
thought
don't know
these
if
are
they've
for
received
one-time grants.
anything in this amount in the past. This
But
is
they've
a-
already been being subsidized by the city, is my point. It doesn't matter the amount, just like, we can't use it for payroll.
So our subsidy right now is, and I don't know what to call it subsidy, our contribution
It's a subsidy.
it helps with operations. This is more with a project, an effort.
An initiative.
I thought that's
Yes.
what we were already doing, was paying for advertising and business support with the chamber. I'm sorry, I'm trying to protect the money, and I've worked with the feds with grants. I do it all the time in my business, and if you mess up one little
Yeah.
thing, they're gonna come get their money, and the IRS and the feds don't play, so
Yeah, this would be for something that is above and beyond what they currently do. That would be pretty, in my estimation, pretty easy to identify that is not just basic ongoing operation that we funded in the past.
But it's the same stuff that you did fund in the past.
So what we funded in the past is not tied to what they are proposing. They're proposing something that is much more than what has been done in the past with marketing and recruiting and different efforts that the chamber's involved with. What we've helped out with the past, and I don't think it's what we've contributed is a great deal, but it's just to help with, it's just that we're indicating that we're partners with them. It's not anywhere near this amount.
Council President Kochmar?
I think it would be really helpful once we get the proposals from the mayor and the chamber so that you can see what they intend to do with it, what they're requesting. And if, in my mind, you would separate these out because the first portion would be to try to help business, how to help businesses to get back on their feet. As Councilmember Sepa Dawson was saying, minority-owned businesses are having a terrible time. And we have a number of minority-owned businesses, but we have a lot of just small mom-and-pop type businesses, and so they're trying to reach out to those. And so I think a lot of those questions would get answered when we see the proposal, and then you may have more questions after that. And then the rest of this down in the human services part, the $3 million, if you look at number 2, the footnote number 2, you'll see what some of the applications have been for that $3 million, for part of that $3 million grant. But really, and I know that there were grants to businesses through PPP. I know that there were grants as well
EIDL.
to other human services agencies. And I don't know how we're going to separate those out. I do know that this money is intended to help business as well as individuals. And so it's kind of a how do we help them? You know, is there a better proposal out there? But at any rate, those are some questions. You may have more after you get the, but I think you really need to see the proposals.
All right.
And we can supply those for the council.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One is there a time limit on within how many years does the money need to be spent? Is there a time limit? What are the ramifications there?
Yeah, it needs to be obligated by 2024 and spent by 26.
26
Yeah.
December.
Okay, all right. And then, you know, I've, kind of with what we've been talking about, I mean, I've seen I think I've seen, you know, have a kind of an idea of what the mayor's plan is. You know, I mean, they have a pretty concrete plan. I mean, we can debate the merits of it or not. With the Chamber of Commerce, I'm all for something, the chamber doing something that would help the economic development here in the city. I'm 100% for that. But I have not seen any type of concrete plan on that at all, other than just talk that, you know, and I think that we definitely need to see it, and then we can debate the merits of it.
Sure.
And also, one other thing, on the 373rd roundabout, okay, 3.5 million, 800,000 from this, how much is the state contributing on that?
So through a state program, we got a grant that was, go off the top of my head here, but just over $2 million that they've contributed through the local safety program.
Okay, all right,
And that grant's been awarded.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sepa Dawson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you. So this ARPA fund, you could use it for, it says relief to individuals, families, and business impacted by COVID, and then it goes on to say public health emergency, economic support to impacted residents and businesses, invest in local infrastructure, and it goes on and on. What I see here, we're spending a lot of it on non-people, I don't know how to say it, around infrastructure, building, improving, and we're only giving $3 million to social services and $15,000 to Arts Commission. That's compared to what we're spending on other infrastructure-related things, it's small. So how do we adjust that to where we recognize the need for the social service support? Because we do have a huge need. I mean, we're talking about homelessness and we don't even know how to address it, you know, and all these different issues that we don't have funds for. I think we could readjust a little bit to where we're really giving more money to these needed people for emergency needs, to individuals and families. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Dovey?
Yeah, I had another couple of questions. Can ARPA funds be used for new startup things, something that wasn't part of COVID and, I guess, like new I mean, let's say that the council member, Lydia, has a great idea on homeless, how to have mini housing on a piece of property, and it takes X million dollars to do it. I'm just sorry.
I support it.
Sorry for using your name, but I'm asking, yeah, I'm just asking the question. Could the funds be used for something like that? Or something creative, something out of the box that we haven't thought about, other than what is on this list?
Yeah, we would need to see more detail what you're proposing to, and then see if it fits. It helps if we're tying it to COVID, that's gonna help our cause.
Yeah, I mean, if you tied COVID to, we have 222 people that lost their house because of COVID, and we wanted to come up with some assistance for them to have that, could that,
Yeah.
I'm just making something up as we go, but
We just need to
if it
track
had,
the recipients and make sure that they
Or-
qualify. Yeah.
or if we said, hey, we really want to have a community market in Federal Way, and we wanted to have seed money to start the process, could that be COVID related?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to just
I mean, I'm,
give you judgment calls right here for everything
Okay.
that you're throwing out, but that we just need to get the details and then tie it to COVID somehow and make sure it meets all the requirements of the grant.
Yeah, I think what the impetus of the ARPA funds is to help those who were impacted by COVID, and to help them get on their feet and stay solvent. I think that's, whether in their houses or their businesses, I think that's the purpose.
All right, Councilmember Seven Dawson?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Dovey. I've been researching and looking at what other cities are doing to address this issue. And there are so many creative ways that we can do this, including what we saw in Vancouver. And so I do appreciate you bringing it up. And when I'm talking about social services, that would actually go under there, and 3 million just does not even scratch the surface. So thank you for bringing it up.
All right,
Is-
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Is it possible for Sarah to describe the 3 million and the programming for that?
She'd love to.
She'd love to. Thank you, Sarah.
Those were the words I was thinking of using. So with the $3 million, we would engage in a light community needs assessment, looking at what those needs are. As you're aware, in addition to COVID, we've had rising housing costs, probably in part because of COVID, but also just the nature of what's happening with the market. Inflation is significant and has a great impact on our community. So they all kind of run together, but we would look at a community needs assessment to assist in making a recommendation to council for prioritizing those funds. And that would be a pretty quick process. We would work with our nonprofit partners as well, just to add another layer of data as to what they're seeing and experiencing. Bring that to council, make a recommendation for priorities, have that discussion with you, and then move forward with an application. It would be, at this time, initial thoughts would be that we would prioritize larger grants. A lot of our Human Services General Fund grants and CDBG public service grants are smaller. We really want to look at fully funding, if it's a staff person or a program, how do we make this a whole program? Because they will be time limited by the nature of these funds. So we want them to be successful, responsive to community needs, and able to evaluate the effectiveness of those services. There could be a variety of needs, as you can imagine, so that prioritization process will be really key in how those funds are allocated. I have some notes here too, some of the other questions. The comment on capital is one of the things that I have noted is capital versus services. It is a larger amount of money. There may be some opportunity for capital costs that we don't always see. And then the potential of looking at how our funds are used and structured in agreements. If there's an intermediate point where we're looking at performance, potentially changing community needs, that we have an opportunity to either add funds to existing contracts or be adaptive to what's going on in the community. So if we're looking at the end of that 2024 for obligating funds, we'd want to hit that, but it gives us an opportunity to do an intermediate point as well.
Councilmember Samadassin?
Yeah, under the footnotes, it says grant application process can include, this is for the 3 million, maybe it's for you. So it talks about progress pushers, game of life, and then there's Lake Haven here. What?
And then there's what?
Lake Haven?
Oh, so Lake Haven had submitted I don't know if it was an actual request or just expressing interest and that they have a need for utility assistance. A really high number of their customers have experienced financial impact and were unable to pay their full bill. They're moving through their process now, but they do still have a large number of customers who have past due debt. What we know happens is if they get a shut-off notice, if they're able to pay it on their own, they're deferring costs somewhere else a lot of times for our households. And utility assistance, just like rent assistance, is important for housing stability. So that would be a program that could fall within our social service program. Lake Haven does work with the Multi-Service Center for its utility assistance, and Multi-Service Center uses a process for determining eligibility of households and tying that to that bill and making that payment directly to Lake Haven.
So these funds will not go directly to the agencies that are in the footnote? Which means it won't go to Lake Haven, it goes to multi-service?
Our intent would be to run an application. So while there were proposals submitted, we would have a little bit more information needed to be considered as part of that evaluation for any of those entities. And the same would be true for utility assistance with Lake Haven. I would assume, and I can't say that for certain, that I would assume that the contract would actually be with a partner like Multi-Service Center who would be providing that utility assistance.
I can explain that a little. I used to be on the committee that would, and a lot of the employees would actually take money out of their own pocket to put it into the customer assistance program. And what happens is, it's a government agency. They can't give a gift of public funds. And so when you've got a young mom and they've got children and the water is shut, you can't turn off the sewer. They just put a lien against the property. But water, you can shut off. And we would have shut-off notices every month. The problem with COVID is people lost their jobs, didn't have enough money, they got behind on their bills, and they let it slide. Well, now, I think the impact was huge. And so at some point, the bill has to be paid. They don't have a choice. And so I think that the money would go to the Multi-Service Center, which is where the money has always gone, and then the Multi-Service Center would then determine the need, the certain amount of money, and then try to get that money to help the people most in need. Some people didn't pay their bills because they didn't pay their bills, but there are other people who didn't pay their bill because they couldn't. And so those are the people that are most in need. Like, you have seniors on fixed income, and so it's tragic. If you're in a house and you don't have water and you don't have electricity, it's dramatic. And
Yeah,
it's
but when I see
heart-rending.
Lake Haven here, I do question because I know we can't fund Lake Haven. So if it was multi-service, I would have not even asked the question.
Yes,
So,
Multi-Service Center, yeah.
And
That's
if I
right.
Yeah.
may I just address the footnote? The footnote is intended to capture entities that had made a request to the city for funds, not necessarily entities that would receive funding. They'd be eligible to apply, or the type of program that those entities
Yeah.
mentioned would be eligible within social services, but they're not guaranteed funding. There is that competitive application.
No, I appreciate the
Thank you.
explanation.
Councilmember Dovey?
Sorry, I have a couple more questions. First of all, I want to thank the committee for going through this. This was not an easy thing to do, and the staff. And I'm wondering, it starts at streetlights and goes down to city hall fixtures. I don't believe any of us are going to have any debate that those are things that have been recommended that we probably should be doing something with. And then we can limit down our discussions to these things that are maybe more not controversial, but more questions asked to figure out where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, you have done that previously, so you could do it
Yeah,
again.
so, I mean, I don't know how we get to where we make the decisions, but I would almost suggest that we break this up as we go through it, and we've had these talks about streetlights all the way down to city hall fixtures, which maybe time is of the essence on some of those things, and like we did on the dump trucks and different things, we just made those happen, and then get more in-depth on these other ones. Now, I will say, the one thing about the MIR grant that I thought was interesting, and this might be even a thing for Lake Haven for water, they were willing to go 50-50. You know, they were going to contribute 50 and if the ARPA was 50. And that's a way we can leverage funds. So some of these things, there might be some leveraging so we can get more for our money.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions, council? Anything else?
No.
All right. Did you have something?
I was just going to ask staff to talk about the Target building. That's 600,000.
Yes.
People might have questions about that.
Thank
Might
you,
as well
Deputy.
answer them now.
Yep, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the Target building, we have 600. So the Target building this is the old Target building, for clarification, that we own. And it's an attractive nuisance. It's attracting trespassers, break-ins, vandalism, graffiti, causing personal injury even in some cases. It's becoming a liability, basically, for the city, and would also likely be a liability in any kind of, if it comes out that we're going to sell the property, it would remain a liability. So we would have difficulty selling it as part of a package that would enhance the property's value. And on that basis, the committee kept this amount in there for demolition. It's, as I mentioned before, it's just becoming an attraction for criminal activity. Our graffiti guys probably clean it once or twice a week. There's break-ins repeatedly. The park staff are constantly trying to secure it in new, creative, and very industrial ways, and they're still finding ways to get in, and so it's becoming a problem. And again, like we've got the study going on for the TC3 property, and so on the TC3 property is this structure, which currently is and will remain a liability on the property. And so either the city needs to demolish it, or in the event of a sale, the buyer needs to demolish it, but the buyer would likely negotiate the price down in the demolition amount in a sale. So whether it's now or in the future, it's something that the city will have to account for, and we believe it's appropriate to account for it now to get rid of it sooner so that we're dealing with fewer problems.
All right.
Yeah,
Councilor Walsh?
On the Target property, do we have any realistic estimates on what the cost would be? Is it $600,000?
Yeah, it's an estimate at this point, and as we speak, prices are going up, so.
Is it just a number that's been pulled out of the air, or what's it
We
based on?
had a rough estimate done, so
EJ.
it's like, it could be more. Yeah, go ahead.
So we received proposals when, at the same time, we demoed the Toys R Us to do it at that point. And then we also went out and received a second round of proposals in 2018, 2019. At that point, the number was like $450,000 to $500,000, and it was less than that the first time around. So we took that number and escalated it by CPI to get to this.
Okay.
But we have not, and council hasn't authorized anything, so we haven't gone out and gotten current pricing, but it
Okay.
is based on real numbers.
Okay, great.
All right. Council, any other questions, comments? Okay, this will be on the agenda, but no final decisions tonight. Councilmember Sepidawson.
No, when we're done, I have a comment. It's
Okay.
not about this.
We're all done.
We have a birthday person here, that's why I wanted to say happy birthday
Oh, great.
to Debbie.
Happy birthday, Debbie. All right. Thanks for being here, and especially with a nice warm day as well. All right, well, we've reached the end of our agenda for the special meeting. We will reconvene for the regular full city council meeting in 45 minutes. Until then, we are adjourned. Thank you. Great job, everybody.